And so there's 43 muscles in the face. The mind creates movement and movement creates muscle. So our faces are constantly changing. So if you go and look at pictures of me at 18 versus 38, 18 had straight eyebrows, 38 had angled eyebrows, because I had to learn it first so then I could teach it to people second. So the mind creates movement, movement creates muscle. So when our parents said, stop making that face or it'll get stuck that way, there's actually some truth to it.
Hey everyone, it's Tamara Thompson with Broadcast Your Authority, and I'm super grateful for our next guest that flew in from Dallas, Texas. Brian Galke, the Decoding Detective, an expert in communication and a dynamic speaker. Starting in roles affected by his mixed introverted extrovert nature and social anxiety, Brian used his positions in retail service and help desk to master interpersonal skills, eventually discovering the game-changing technique of decoding facial features. Ooh, I really like this topic already. I was like, tell me, what's going on? This skill helped him climb from introvert to the help desk role to regional vice president of sales, managing a $40 million portfolio. His exceptional skills led him to be flown across the U.S. to engage with elite customers and contracts over $1 million. He's now a sought-after speaker, and trust me, I see his social media like every single week. He just got back from the Go High Level Summit. Like he was like a keynote there. Like this guy is one of the best speakers out there. So if you're looking to hire a great keynote speaker, this guy's definitely it. So Brian, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
I love this. So obviously I've read a little bit more about your background, but really how did you really get into this though, honestly?
Loose circumstances. A friend came in from out of town. She said, hey, let's go to dinner. I show up at the restaurant and she calls and says, hey, I'm not going to make it. I go, oh, here we go. She's like, no, you got to come meet this guy. He's at the trade show. He's a speaker. You have to come meet him. I go, why do I need to come meet this guy? I'd already ordered a drink. I'm like, no, I'm going to be stubborn. I'm just going to stay here. She's like, no, you have to come. You have to come. I go, why? She goes, because he reads faces. And I go, I'm not coming for that BS. And so she finally convinced me, come on, I'm in from out of town. Come over and meet him. But I went with an agenda. And my agenda was to prove that this guy was a fraud. Because I thought he ruined my dinner plans. I'm going to ruin his night. So I went over there expecting to hear like generic Barnum statements. Things are like, oh, you've had a hard time in life. Or, oh, you know somebody whose name starts with, and pick any letter that's in the alphabet. And instead, he sat down, everybody at dinner, and he started dissecting people one at a time, just like the four of you guys. And then he got to me. I'm like, has this dude been digging through my trash? Like, it was crazy what he could tell me about me just from my facial features. Yeah.
Wow. I was like, is he going to go through all of us now?
We absolutely can. We'll get to this. That's easy enough to do. That's the fun part. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, look, I already did it. So, but to finish it, so then I went from Dallas to Fort Worth, which is 45 minutes apart, twice a month to do group training. I was just one of the students who picked it up really fast. And the reason I bring that up is it's not something natural that I was born with. It's a learned skill, but it changed my life because as an introvert, we live in our own heads. But when I'm focused on you, I'm not thinking about me. And that's how real relationships and rapport is built, is learning to focus on communication with others instead of just pitching or talking about what you want to talk about. And that's where things change. So now you want to be the first, since you asked right away? Okay, so there's a few things that are pretty interesting. So for the people watching, raise your eyebrows up. So those are called Einstein lines, long, intense, deep study lines. So we know that you're not a bullet points person. You want deep information. You want to dive deep. Now squint down. So that's what I want people to see. She has more than two lines here. So what that is perfectionist-like tendencies. So sometimes, by the way, good enough is good enough because you stop from putting things out there because it's not perfect. If I'm sending you an email and I've got typos or my numbers are off, that's going to drive you up the wall. So even though you have those, right, your eyes going from the inside of the eye here to the outside, they both angle up. So you're more the positive person. If I come with a lot of negativity, you mentally shut down fast. Then what's interesting about her eyebrows, and I'm going super deep on this. Normally we don't go this deep, but you have an interesting part. So eyebrow thickness here tells somebody like gauge of attitude, like how much are they interested? What's their favorite part? So you have very thick here, and at the very end, you get bored and want to hand it off to other people. Most people are, I want to get something started and I'm bored immediately, but you hold on a little bit longer than other people do when you're doing those things. High and wide cheeks, lots of energy, so you can keep going and going. Strong jawline right here, very stubborn. Once you make up your mind, you latch in and hold that position, and very difficult to get you to undo it. And then a good strong chin. I don't have to walk on eggshells around you. Now, what's interesting is about the 3 ladies that are up here.
God, that's so wild.
Say, should we put him to the test?
Know her.
Yeah.
I know.
And I know her.
Yeah.
And you're 9 out of 10.
Yeah. And now what you guys have in common, and I can only use this with you because you're the only lady who's here that I can see an ear. You have larger ears versus eyes, so you're auditory first. So if I was trying to talk to you, much like him, I'd say things like, does this sound like a good idea? Do you hear where I'm coming from? Because you're auditory learners first. So that's when you're looking at someone's face, I know what I want to say, but if I'm making more about the person than the presentation, that's where things change. But I wouldn't tell you this is what I'm doing, but I would look at your face, analyze it, and go, okay, I know what I want to say, but how do I speak your language?
Wow.
So keep it positive, make sure it's grammatically set up properly, use auditory words. And because once you make up your mind and you latch in, I've got one shot to win you over. If I don't get in that one shot, it's hell to try and get me a second shot.
Oh my God. That's remarkable.
Yeah.
But how does this, the current age of social media and disconnect, how does all of that, the short bursts, the disconnect,
Yes.
how does all that play into
So this is the
gift?
first proactive skill I ever met. And that was, I can look you up on LinkedIn before I ever meet you. So as long as I know who I'm going to meet with, what I could have done is I could have looked up all 4 of y'all ahead of time and figured out, how do I speak to each one of you before we ever meet? So when I was in the presentation group that we'd travel all around, I had an idea of who we might meet with, and I'd go and analyze their picture. So I go look up people on LinkedIn, start on LinkedIn, but then move to social media. Why? Because LinkedIn isn't always a current picture. And so there's 43 muscles in the face. The mind creates movement, and movement creates muscle. So our faces are constantly changing. Part of my presentation when I'm keynoting is I show a picture of me at 18 versus 38. My ears used to stick out more away from my head. They got closer over time. My eyebrows used to be straight like yours. And then when I became a corporate trainer, angled eyebrows, or what's my angle, help me understand it so then I can help other people. So if you go and look at pictures of me at 18 versus 38, 18 had straight eyebrows, 38 had angled eyebrows, because I had to learn it first so then I could teach it to people second. So our faces are constantly changing. If you don't believe that, go and look at, if you go to an open casket funeral and we see the person in the box, but don't recognize them because all that muscle tension is gone. Or if you've ever met somebody with a stroke, if it's on the left brain, the right side of the face goes down. If it's on the right side, the left face goes down. So the mind creates movement, movement creates muscle. So when our parents said, stop making that face or it'll get stuck that way, there's actually some truth to it.
So what's one of the greatest client success stories? Because, I'm in sales. I think to a certain extent, we're all in sales, whether
Sure.
you're selling your kids to go brush your teeth at night or you're leading, a $1 million sales organization. It's so crucial to be able to help people buy, not sell people stuff. And I think
100%.
it's such a lost art in the age of social media when we're in this constant gratification of what's next, what's next, what's next.
Yes.
And it's such a lost art. So talk to us about a client success story you've had on, kind of changing
Sure.
the conversation.
So there's a guy named Atiba, A-T-I-B-A, and he's a digital marketer. And he had me on his podcast, and he's like, I still don't know if I believe this. I'm like, I'm cool. I love skeptics, but I like curious skeptics. I was skeptical. I told you guys this story, but I like to dig into things and make my own mind up. So he said, I don't know about this. He goes, but I've got this big presentation coming up in 2 hours. I'm like, you got a picture of the guy? He's like, well, no. I'm like, well, let's go look him up online. So we went and we looked him up and we drew arrows on his face. I use a cool software called Sketch that allows you to take a picture of someone, then add content and everything's to it. So I drew all these arrows and I explained what it was. And I said, now show me your pitch. He was doing everything wrong because he was pitching the way that he thinks. And so we went back to his presentation. We're like, change this, change this, change this. He called me back an hour afterwards and he's like, I just got the deal. So we changed his presentation. He landed a 6-figure client an hour later that he probably would have lost. And the guy never asked him the cost of the services.
Wow.
Because he was making it about his client. And that's exactly what you were saying. We all have something that we need to accomplish or we have to sell. And if you show up and throw up or you have commission breath, people can tell that you're needy and you're making it about what your goal is versus is it really the right product for them. But if you learn to speak their language and you're attempting to speak to them, then they give you their time and attention back as well.
Yeah. The revenue master at work.
Yeah.
So for me personally, I have no problem with people just psychoanalyzing me on the spot. I'm perfectly fine with that. But how do you overcome the problem with people who will find you intimidating, always reading them, always sort of analyzing them?
Because I tell you, but with other students, they don't know that you've done it. It's kind of like everybody here's probably read a body language book and you use it all the time, but people don't think, are they analyzing my body language at the same time? Now, when I walk in, the way that I put an audience at ease is I put that picture of me at 18 versus 38 up, because if not, nobody ever wants to look at me again the rest of the time that they're there. So by putting my own face up and showing everybody what my face says, it makes people curious, what does their face say about them? But if I'm going into a deal, I don't tell people, hey, I looked you up on LinkedIn and I know this, this, and this. Instead, I just talk to them in the way I think that they want to be talked to. And it's got a very, very high success rate.
So you're adjusting depending on target audience and situation.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yes. And even the same thing. So the way I would talk to each of you is a little bit different. So for you, we talked earlier, you have what's known as chameleon eyebrows, which is they're see-through, but they're straight. So I know for you, get straight to the point. Your eyebrows are also very close to your eyes. So the longer I talk, the more I lose you. Okay. Versus we talked, you have rounded eyebrows. So you think about the people around you first and then yourself second. Like me, your eyebrows are a little bit higher. So you need a little more time before you make a decision. For you, you've got angled eyebrows. So that is, what's your angle? Help you understand it. So then you can help others. And then you have a combination, because on this side where a wedding ring is, that's the personal side of somebody's face. Yours is more straight, but on your professional side, it's more angled. So am I talking to your personal side or your professional side? Because you're more asymmetrical than the other three are. But when I'm talking about things like, for example, when I used to sell technology, if I was talking about the specifications of the product, I'm going to make eye contact with you because you're the facts, figures, data person. But if I'm going to talk about how the customers are going to benefit from you purchasing this product, I'm going to look at you because you think about the people around you.
Love my benefits.
Yes. And then when I bring it back and I talk about the reason that you want to buy the product, I'm going to look at both of you because you have the angled eyebrows. And so it's selling the same product, but it's making eye contact to make sure the person understands I'm talking to you, even though I'm discussing my product.
Yeah. And Brian, I don't even think you know this, but I design benefits for a living.
Oh no, I didn't know.
So I know, I don't think you knew that. So yes. It's just so cool. And I know you have a daughter, right? So how does this skill play into being a dad?
So she's still young and it's not so much there, but I'm a huge fan of any soft skills. So body language, like teaching her to open up versus shut down. Now, as a parent, there's several things to watch. Like you can tell if a kid's having a bad day because they try to make themselves small. So if you see any kids making themselves small, you can dig in and figure out what's going on in their head. What are they not telling you? So there's a way more to use it as a parent than there is to teach it to my kid. However, there's a great little book that we got her when she was like 4 or 5 called like Read the Face. And it's not what I teach, but is when somebody goes like this, what is the reaction or what's the emotion that they're having? And so it's teaching kids to learn to focus on other people because kids are being raised in a digital age where most of their interactions are with tablets and technology. Now, don't get me wrong. Look, my parents said the same thing when I was growing up, like, don't sit so close to the TV. But the difference is they're interacting with it. I was watching a show, but they think the characters on there are real. Like she loves to watch other kids play with toys, or the big things like Twitch and all these other things. People are watching other people live their lives on a regular basis and the kids are doing it. Like you'll learn this soon enough. Like A for Adley, all her parents do is videotape her like going and doing things. And my daughter loves to watch that show.
So is it something you can turn off or is it like as soon as you see someone, you can't help yourself, you're already doing these assessments?
That is a great question. No, it's something you have to want to turn on. So if I'm starting to get distracted, ADD moment or something like that, I'll pick a different feature on the face to look at and think, okay, how do they think? How do they take in information? So it helps me stay focused on you instead of analyzing the entire time. But that is a great question because people are afraid to learn it because they think all of a sudden it's like a heads-up display that all these arrows and everything start going every different direction. It's not that way.
So as a parent of an autistic child,
yes,
or a child with autism and one with ADHD,
yes,
I also think that there can be something wrong if we judge people too much based on their face expression.
Correct.
And my son is a great example. Like I cannot read on his face what is going on. I cannot read on his body language. He has a different operating system. That's just the way it is.
Right.
So, and I also I used to work in the tech sector where I have a lot of software engineers who are borderline on the spectrum as well.
Yes.
And the same practices that goes in a typical more sales situation is usually not applied in the same group of people. Correct. What's your thoughts on those questions?
So, a few different answers. There is a trainer, I'll have to give you his name later on. So he has autism, but he's one of the best sales trainers that's out there because everything to him is a formula. He doesn't take emotions into it, but he trains everything from like sales for large corporations to private employees. And the man is a genius at what he does because for him, it's a puzzle, right? We start thinking emotions. So what are they thinking? What does that mean? And we make it about us. He sees it all as the matrix when he's looking at people. With what you were talking about also. So that's more micro expressions. That's Paul Ekman's territory. If you've ever seen the TV show Lie to Me, micro expressions are like body language for the face. With what I was taught, physiognomy goes all the way back to the Greeks with Aristotle, is resting facial features. So it can still show true because a lot of people with autism don't make the same facial movements that we do because they're just thinking nonstop. They're not having the emotion because it's the emotion that makes the muscles move on the face. Does that make sense?
Very much. And the emotions aren't connected with the body language at all. My son can come home some days and I would have assumed he's happy, but he can have had a miserable day in school.
Yes.
And you have to really sit down and get it out of him. And he doesn't even look at you when you speak to him. He don't want to have eye contact at all. Because he can't hear me then.
It's they're picturing something in their mind. A great movie on this for people who've never experienced this is The Accountant with
Ben Affleck.
Ben Affleck.
Yeah, it's really good.
That is a good portrayal of what the experience is like for them.
Is there a relationship between once I learn these things about myself and then emotion regulation?
There is to a degree. So you can change your face by the muscle movements that you do over time. So I mentioned before, 43 muscles in the face. The mind creates movement, movement creates muscle. Well, if you have a downturned mouth, it's because you're frowning too often. So what are you doing to add happiness back into your life so you have a smile? So you can change a downturned mouth to an upturned mouth by smiling more often. And when you're genuinely doing it, it will alter that over time. Now, if you look at actors, actresses, models, where they have to fake a smile for the red carpet all the time, they'll have a line right below their nose. So below their nose and above their upper lip, that's called a forced smile line. So if you see somebody who has that, it's nothing bad. It just means you have to do a double check. Is that their real smile or is that their default smile? But yes, you can change things. Like if you look at my eyes as a kid, because you have the upturned eyes. When I was raised in a very loving household, but there was like, hey, things don't always work out. What's your backup plan? So my eyes used to angle down going from the inside to the outside. So I was always worried about the downside of things. Now, it didn't make me a negative Nancy. It made me awesome at tech support because I could think what wasn't working right. However, when I got out of technology and I got more into sales, well, sales always brings along personal development. And so my eyes started to angle up over time and adjust. So even our eye angles will adjust over time if we change the thinking that's going on inside here.
I have to ask another question. Again, working in the tech world, remote workforces.
Yes.
People don't want to turn on their videos.
Correct.
What do we do then?
You have to make a policy for the company to have it on. What it is it's fear of judgment. So I love this device right here because it connects us to the world, but it disconnects us from each other. Now, we've talked about this outside. If you go and look up the Intelligent.com survey from 2023, they interviewed 800 employers, and the three stats that I love that kind of stick out to me: 53% couldn't hold eye contact during an interview, 23% refused to turn on a camera for a virtual interview, and 19% brought their parents to the interview. So the last one just makes me laugh. I have to share that one. But the 53% of eye contact is because kids were raised with this device where they talk to it versus each other. And we could create perfection with this. I can retake as many selfies as I want. I can craft the perfect email message. I can craft the email. I can order dinners, dates, you name it, from my phone. So they have the same social anxiety of a face-to-face communication as most people would have sitting in this chair right now, because they feel I'm not in control, versus they've been raised to have control the entire time. And a very, very simple analogy is the first time we took my daughter to the movies in an actual theater, it came up with previews and she goes, I don't like it, skip it. Because that's what the world that they've been raised in. Everything is on demand. They're in control. And so for them to come and have a face-to-face conversation, they're not in control. They don't know where to look because they've been staring at a screen. And so they're just little things we can do. Now, a super simple cheat sheet on if you have a Zoom call, go and get a Post-it note, draw an arrow on it, and stick it to where your camera is. Because what we end up doing is looking down the entire time to see everybody's reaction instead of looking up where the camera is. So if I did this whole interview like this, it wouldn't be nearly as appealing as this. So when you're looking at the camera, that's when you're creating eye contact for the people who are looking and listening to you while you're talking. Mm-hmm. Or you can cheat. Now this is more expensive. What I have is I have my laptop here, Then I put my camera here, but I have a monitor behind my camera. So I look past my camera to see the people in the background versus looking down the entire time.
I do the same.
Yeah.
I'm dying to ask you what happens with things like, Botox, plastic surgery, these things that can alter your face.
Yes.
I had the same question because I really want Botox, but I'm like, is this going to impede my sales?
I don't have the same question.
Yeah.
Just want to put that out there.
Yeah, exactly. It all depends on the type of procedure. So that's an affect effect thing. So what it means is if you go and change a particular affect on your face, it changes how the outside world treats you, and therefore it affects you later on. So the number one plastic surgery right now is lip enhancement. Why? Because we all say the phrase, keep a stiff upper lip if we want someone to be stoic or quiet. So subconsciously, if we see somebody with a very flat upper lip, we think, oh, I shouldn't ask them a lot of questions. We don't realize it, but we've been taught this our entire life. So kind of derailing for a second.
So you're pro lip injections, is that what I'm hearing?
Anything that makes anybody feel sexy. I don't care if it's a power suit, sexy shoes.
You my husband's cell phone number.
Yeah. I'm dead serious. It changes how people feel. It's like you walk out and your shoulders go back more and everything. Now, the worst thing, it drives me nuts on social media. I have a lot of friends who are lip injections and cosmetic, I forget what the term is, but we'll call it cosmetic specialists. So they do Botox and everything. Stop taking a picture of it as soon as you do their lips, because all I see are the needle injection points. And I'm like, that looks painful. So they need to do a picture of before and like 2 weeks after when it's healed. But yes, it will literally change the way it works. And if you go, oh, well, it's only been around for so long. Look at older women, like in their 80s and 90s, they'll draw larger lips with lipstick than they actually have. But if you go to any former communist country where people weren't allowed to have an opinion, then there was a lot of what's called in body language lip suppression, which is this. Well, that will flatten your lips over time. So you can have somebody, you don't necessarily have to go to have plastic surgery. You can actually start talking more and your lips will get larger. It just takes longer to do it.
Yeah. So speaking of the 90s, I grew up watching the OJ trial.
Yes.
And I remember when they brought in, all of the different jury experts and things to study what you're kind of talking about. So kind of to what you were saying, this is not new, but not a lot of people do what you do. It's hard to find. Correct. So do you get a lot of calls from attorneys wanting help with high level cases?
They don't know about it. So here's the crazy part. It's taught at some law schools, but very few. The gentleman who taught to me was an attorney who learned it for jury consulting and ended up leaving his law practice to teach it around the world. He ended up retiring during COVID. So he'll still do little stuff on Zoom calls and things. But yes, it's attorney's greatest weapon. So I'm actually speaking at a conference in 2 weeks in Phoenix and one in January to teach attorneys this skill because it's not taught at every school. But imagine they have to sit, you're in a jury box, you can't see body language. And again, it's about proactive. What's the best thing for attorneys is they have to be persuasive in who they're talking to. So are they saying the right thing for the audience? That's what they don't know. Well, they will after we teach them, but yes. So once
once the jury's finalized, knowing how to address your closing arguments and whatnot.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or who to make eye contact with at what point during your talk, because they're there for days and extended periods of time. So the number one thing that we all have is, four things: physical safety, emotional safety. We want to feel seen and heard, and we want to feel connected. That's what this skill is. So one of the things you said earlier was judging people. It's not actually judging. It's learning to understand other people and how do they think and speak. So the analogy I like to give is I was a horrible traveler when I was a kid. I used to go to other countries, and if they didn't speak English, well, I'd speak English louder.
Oh, no.
Yeah, right? We do that all the time. And that is when we think everybody thinks like us, but they don't. And so when you take the time to think, how do I present to the person? That's where it changes. Because we all know when somebody's just trying to bulldoze us with what they want versus work with me on, let's make an agreement to do something together. Does that make sense?
So how will AI change what you do? And the reason why I say that is I've now seen programs that are used by salespeople where they, in real time, analyze the face. They analyze how the words are spoken, if it's soft, hard, whatever. And they can handle rejection handling within milliseconds.
Yes.
Is this a trade that is needed for AI, or is this something humans should teach themselves anyway?
Humans need to learn to present the message before they're on the call. So that's the big thing is if you can go and prepare and figure out how do I make this about the person before you're on the Zoom call, then you can use the AI information to figure out, am I on the right path? What do I need to change? So you're absolutely right. The programs pick up on pitch, tonality. Are they speeding up? Are they slowing down? But then it's looking for micro expressions on the face. So that's more of the Paul Ekman territory. But this allows me, like when I used to go do presentations and it was any customer over $1 million that we were flown around the US, me and two other people, I would always check my projector, my PowerPoint, my product, but people were always the unknown until I learned this skill. And the difference is when you walk in, you can walk in with a little bit of confidence because it's like meeting an old friend versus walking in cold and just hoping that I do things right. But we also did it with blind evaluation committees. So we didn't always know who was going to be on the committee. So when we walked in, I'd immediately start looking how high or low their eyebrows, what shape of their eyebrows, and I'd figure out how do we talk to the people. Now, when I was doing solo presentations, if I went in and we had 48 slides because it was a huge government request for proposal or an RFP, and I went in and I saw everybody who had eyebrows like yours, which were straight and low, I'm going to trim it down to just a few slides because the longer I talk, the more I'm going to lose you. So if I had stuck to my 48 slides to answer everything in the RFP, I would change it to, hey, we answered everything in the RFP. I know you guys got the 400 pages of results. What is it that you have the question about? You've read through our stuff. You understand what's out there. What do you need us to see? However, if people had very high eyebrows, I knew keep the 48 slides in there because we have to win them over a little bit at a time.
You're right. I make up the decision. Roughly 5 minutes in, you have the first few sentences. If you haven't told me the value and what the price is,
yes,
I stop listening.
But I also think that's most business owners. Most business owners, when you're running a company of a certain size, you have to make decisions very quickly, decisively, and you have to move on. And if you have the skill that you're talking about, you can walk into a room and get right to the point in the most effective way possible. How many more deals are you going to be able to close? I mean, that's just, math right there. And I think that's such a valuable skill.
You asked about success rate earlier. So I gave you an example that everybody always wants to hear about, like the 6-figure deal that happened in no time. We teach this to people who knock on doors. Yes, people still knock on doors for a living. So I end up speaking at like door-to-door con. Those people have 7 seconds before somebody slams the door on them, pulls a gun, or calls the cops. And that's what we teach them is they already have the script memorized. They already know what they do, but they're selling a commodity, roofs, solar panels, alarm systems, pesticide. But they have to immediately make it about the person they're talking to so that door doesn't get shut.
Yeah. I mean, I remember my first sales training as my sales coach says, you're a woman, so you're going to get an extra maybe 10, 12 seconds. What are you going to do with it? And I said, all right, we're not going to blow it. So anyway, I just think about how much farther I would have gotten on if I had, known or had access to your resources.
The craziest part, this was part of the academic system until Henry VIII had it removed. He said, I don't like the idea that beggars and vagabonds can use this against their fellow man. Now, this is the same guy when he wanted a new wife. The current one, but really, as AI becomes more and more prevalent, AI and automation, like you brought up, soft skills are what's going to save your jobs and what's going to keep your business afloat because we're all looking to use AI to trim something else out. So we were talking before this. I use Opus Clips. A year and a half ago, you needed a video editor that was going to cost you a couple $100 to a couple $1,000 a month. Now you need a subscription to Opus Clips. So what are you doing to keep yourself relevant is you need to be working on soft skills. So I say there's 2 important versions of AI that everybody needs. Number one is you have to already be interesting. So when people look you up, do they want to dig in and learn more about you? So that's the first AI. So are you branded? I always wear a vest. Why? Because I can walk into somebody else's event and people go, that's the face guy, and they'll come and talk to me. So I'm already interesting. But then the second one is you have to be actually interested in other people. And if you're just making about you or your product, look, we can have the most amazing product. And if I just come and tell you why it's the best product, all that's doing is showing up and throwing up. But if I can convince you and I'm actually interested in making you the client, not just selling my product, it changes how the dynamics are done.
I think I'm going to have a part 2 of this this session. I wish we had more time to continue this today. I do appreciate you coming out here. This is like an awesome conversation. I'm like, wait, now what? I'm like, yeah, no, we'll talk back.
We'll come back. Yes, we'll come back. Yeah.
Can you tell those that are like just as jonesed up as we are about this conversation, could you tell our audience a little bit, how they can connect with you, if they bring you in as, a keynote speaker, how can they connect with you?
So everything is subtle skills. So Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, you name it. But what I realize is nobody can spell subtle. So the easiest way is to go to getthecheatsheet.com. And what they'll do is they'll take you to the website. It's all the books I recommend, all the resources, and they can download a cheat sheet also.
Cheat.com?
Yeah, okay. Getthecheatsheet.com. Yeah.
Awesome.
I was like, that's available? You guys were talking about buying domains. I buy them all the time. I bought on the way here, whatismyfacesay.com. I'm like, why am I not using them?
Remind us of your Instagram handle because your Instagram is pretty impressive as well.
Yeah, subtle skills, SUBTLESKILLS. So as of this morning, 195,000 followers. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's very impressive. Well, I appreciate you. Thank you for just flying in from Dallas all the way over. I'm like, we're gonna have to do a part 2 of this.
Hey, always looking for a reason to come back.
Oh, love it. Well, thank you so much, Brian, for joining us. And those of you that are watching, leave a comment. Let me know what you think. I think it was an incredible episode. We're gonna definitely do a part 2 with Brian. Be sure to subscribe, ring that bell, and we'll see you in the next episode.